Little NFC West matchup here. Seattle, thrilling victory at the end here. Comeback victory here for the Seattle Seahawks to make it quite a tight 4-team race there in that division. 3 teams now tied at 5-5, and then the Arizona Cardinals alone at the top at 6-4, so just 1 game ahead of all 3 of those teams. Seattle wins this one 20-17. Seattle's top 5 graded players in this one. When we were talking about Josh Downs before, I said him and Jackson Smith and Jigba, 2 of the best slot receivers in the game. Here we have Jackson Smith and Jigba, the top graded player for the Seattle Seahawks at an 88.2. Center, Oli Oluwatimi with an 80.8. Cornerback Devon Witherspoon with a 78.2. Linebacker Tyrese Knight with a 77.5. And then offensive tackle Abraham Lucas, good to see him back in the starting lineup, with a 76.8. Quarterback Geno Smith in this one is 71.9. And then on the San Francisco side of things, wide receiver Juwan Jennings an 82.1. Guard Dominic Pooney with this 81.6. Offensive tackle Colt McKivvick's 79.4. Edge rusher Leonard Floyd 71.0. Center Jake Brendel with a 70.9, and then quarterback Brock Purdy a 63.7. What do we got, Dalton?
Okay, so sometimes it's good to show some humility and admit when you're wrong, right?
No.
I was wrong this week.
Oh,
well, some of us are humble, Trevor. Okay, I don't know what your bot audience has your ego looking like, but
well, they're bots, so pretty good. Okay, it's pretty good living.
They really cater to you.
Yeah, so they're bots.
Anyway, sometimes I have to admit I'm wrong. And I pretty much guaranteed everybody all week the 49ers would win this game. And why did I do that? Because for the last 6 meetings, every single time the Niners played the Seahawks got run right over on the ground. Every time. In that 6-game winning streak against Seattle, San Fran averaged on design carries 177 yards a game. All right? Seattle finally stopped the run to some extent. Only 91 designed rushing yards for the 49ers in this game. It kept them in the game. If nothing else, you have to keep yourself in the game against the Niners. Don't let them just run away with it like they had done the last literally 6 times, okay? 22 designed carries for the 49ers. 91 rushing yards. They only forced 3 missed tackles. Longest carry of the day was only 11 yards from Christian McCaffrey, all right? The big thing in this game that Seattle, you could see it, they moved their defensive ends out just a little bit wider than they usually do, and they said, listen, if you're going to beat us, just beat us up the middle, please. We're so sick of you running off tackle. Because that's what the Niners do. They run off tackle. It's Kyle Shanahan. They want to get out there and run the stretch and do all of that. Finally, Seattle answered with just, even if we're not great. Remember we talked about before in the secondary, if you're not that great, just sit back and don't give up explosives.
Yeah.
The Seahawks did the run game version of that. Just don't give them the sideline. Just don't, because then they'll just run down the sideline, and there we go. That's going to be 200 yards again. At least keep them between the tackles, and just make tackles. And if they get 5 yards, okay, fine. At least they didn't get 60. And it kept them in the game. This was the one time. The Niners only got off tackles 7 times and got 12 yards on it. They finally kept contained, stopped the run, and at the very least, which he took advantage of, they gave Geno Smith a chance to save their season, because that's what they did in this game. If they were 4-6 and behind everybody else, they would have had a huge problem. I don't think they would have came back from that. Now at 5-5, everybody's in striking distance. With the way Geno in their passing game is, it can be hot and cold, but you know what? All 4 teams in the NFC West have a shot to win the division. But the biggest thing to me, finally for once, they slowed down the 49ers on the ground and gave themselves a chance to win.
It's a good call out. On the other side of things, man, San Francisco's defense, specifically when Nick Bosa went out, because Nick Bosa went out in the third quarter with about 8.5 left in the game. Seattle had 3 drives after that. One was a touchdown, other was turnover on downs, the other one was a touchdown. And so you're talking about 14 points allowed with no Bosa on the field. They went from a negative 0.36 EPA per play with Bosa on the field through whatever it was, 2 quarters and change, to then a positive 0.270 EPA per play without Bosa there. So a massive swing, almost half a point swing each play with Bosa on the field versus not on the field. It was just night and day different. And the 49ers, we've talked about this defense. Like, this defense is sneaky. Over the last couple of weeks, we've brought this up a couple of times. Like, run defense for this team, not really great. Like, sometimes coverage is a little up and down just because coverage is up and down naturally anyway. So when the defensive line already wasn't playing well, and now you're taking Nick Bosa out of it, very clearly Seattle was confident with Geno standing in the pocket, with them getting the ball exactly where they needed to, which brings me to my most impressive with Jackson Smith-Njigba. 11 targets, 10 catches, 110 receiving yards. He has the most snaps from the slot this year, the most yards from the slot this year, the most catches from the slot this year. So this is a highly productive football player. And then, obviously, him playing the most snaps from the slot naturally gives him the ability to stack up the stats from the slot. But he has been really rewarding this team when they have targeted him. We've talked a lot about how DK Metcalf is sort of a Geno Smith style of wide receiver. He's a contested catch guy. Geno Smith just wants to throw the big-time throws between the tight coverage and give his team an opportunity to come down with a pass. But Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think, is rounding out this offense with those two guys there. And then, obviously, you throw Tyler Lockett out there as well when he is healthy. So Smith-Njigba's really kind of come along and been a worthwhile draft pick for them now as somebody who's one of the best slot receivers in the game, which is a lot of fun to watch.
I think it's the biggest improvement in their offense this year because I watched Smith-Njigba a lot last year, and the one thing I wasn't a fan of, and this was under Shane Waldron last year, was they didn't create ways to get him the ball. Obviously, he's really good, and apparently now every week's the Rose Bowl, so he can just tee off every week, but it just wasn't a lot of design looks for him and not a lot of ways to isolate him. And Ryan Grubb, I think, does just such a better job of getting him, if it's not looks by design, just getting him into the first read, right? Because like we talked about with Josh Downs earlier, he's a chain mover. And you need a chain mover. It's great that Metcalf can hit the home runs and Tyler Lockett can do what he does. And I think if you have Smith-Njigba on the inside over the middle, especially working the chains like that, you got a dangerous passing game like you mentioned with a lot of dimensions. I want to go on the other side in the slot sort of on defense. I just love Devon Witherspoon, man. He's just a great football player no matter where he is. And they're leaning him more into this role like the Chiefs do with Trent McDuffie, where it can be like outside on early downs and inside on late downs, or maybe even move him inside to help in the run game. He was their highest graded run defender in this game. I mentioned the run defense, 79.1 run defense grade. We know he's a great tackler. He's one of the best tackling corners in football. He's so darn aggressive. Couple of run stops, pass breakup that it was deflected and led to an interception in this game. Consistent cover guy. Just such a great versatile football player. Again, that's the one comp in the league I have to it as a guy who kind of flips inside and outside. It's what Trent McDuffie does with the Chiefs and just plays every role in their secondary that they need. He hits people. He's a great tackler. He can cover. He can blitz. He had a pressure as a blitzer that forced an incompletion from Brock Purdy. Just incredible work that he does from so many different spots in the field at such a young age. He's one of my favorite guys to watch week in and week out.
And what's your most disappointing? Before I hit mine, because mine's a little bit more big picture.
It's not panic, but I'm kind of side-eyeing this 49ers passing game a little bit. Okay, so Brock Purdy, we're going to go the first 6 weeks of the season.
Okay.
He was the second highest graded quarterback in football. All right?
Okay.
The last 4 weeks, he's got a 56.2 passing grade. Okay, 31 quarterbacks have taken at least 80 dropbacks in that time. That's dead last among those 31. And that's since week 7, all right? Now, Trevor, they play the Chiefs that week. What happened just before halftime in that game? What disastrously bad thing happened in that game that I'm suddenly implying it might be a cause for this? That was when Brandon Ayuk tore his ACL. And I know Jawan Jennings is playing great, and we've highlighted him. I
thought you were looking for a play, and I was like, I don't know what play you're talking about, and it was the Brandon Ayuk play. Okay.
Just before halftime, week 7, against the Chiefs, that Brandon Ayuk tore his ACL. And I know Jawan Jennings has been great, and I know George Kittle was hurt in this game, but it's not just this game that Purdy's struggled. It's the last 4, and that's the first one, okay? I don't think it's any coincidence that we've suddenly seen struggles now that Brandon Ayuk is out for the season. Because he's quietly one of the best receivers in football, right? Top 12, 14, somewhere in there, somewhere around that range.
I think that's fair. That's
so efficient. Fair. He was their best route runner. That's easily, I think. I know Debo does all the things he does, and Jennings is coming on. Brandon Ayuk was their most natural, classic wide receiver as a route runner, especially. So reliable. I don't think it's any coincidence that suddenly Brock Purdy is struggling since Ayuk got hurt, and they need to find a way for him to break out of this funk. And again, George Kittle missed this game. Anytime you're missing George Kittle, that's a big deal. Get him healthy. Obviously, it looks better. They need to, get Debo, get a little more creative with that. And they need to get Christian McCaffrey going. It doesn't feel like McCaffrey's hit his top gear yet. I don't see him looking as explosive as usual yet. We'll probably get there with more reps. But I am kind of at least side-eyeing this passing game and Brock Purdy a little bit without Brandon Ayuk, because I've got 4 games here where I go, you're last in the NFL in passing grade, and that's a problem. We can't have that if you're trying to make the playoffs or win this division.
My most disappointing is kind of just the 49ers season to this point. They're tied with the Los Angeles Rams and the Seattle Seahawks now at 5-5, but they have now each played the division opponents once, and they've lost all 3 of them. So all of a sudden, you are at best going to be like toss-up tiebreakers with all of these teams when it comes to either making the playoffs or winning the division. And it just, I'm not giving up on the 49ers. They're still a really talented football team, but it's hard to look at this team and think, okay, well, if you're 5-5 at this point in the season, are you really going to make a game-changing run here? I don't know about all that, So it's
and they don't look the same.
No, and
as they haven't, because they've been the dominant team.
It's hard because
here's the other problem.
I actually hate the Kyle Shanahan can't win big games thing. Like I really do, but
here's
your
big problem. Your next 2 games are at Green Bay and at Buffalo.
No, it does not get easier for them. And then again, you have to play all these teams again, and I think that those 3 teams, the Cardinals, the Rams, and the Seahawks a little bit of a toss-up because I think they're kind of week to week, but the Cardinals and the Rams are getting better. You already lost to them once. I don't have a lot of faith that the Niners are going to beat them again, so all of a sudden a team that I felt like was another double-digit win team, another team is going to win this division once again, I think that's certainly at risk now.
They need to
with
go
how they're playing.
They need to go 5-2, and I'm not sure there's 5 wins of these last 7 games that I see here. You got
what's the 7?
Go ahead. You have a round with the division. Again, that's 3.
Yep.
Packers, Bills, Bears, Dolphins.
Yeah, that's not – oh, boy, that's tough.
And Packers, Bills, and Dolphins.
Yeah, I don't know if they make the playoffs.
All on the road, all 3 of them.
Yeah, and if this Niners team doesn't make the playoffs, that's
tough.
Extremely disappointing, even with injuries. That's extremely disappointing.
My worry level with the Niners it's probably at about a 6 out of 10 right now, because they need to go 5-2. I think to win this division.
Yeah, I'd probably go 7 out of 10. Honestly.
Yeah,
I'd be right in that same boat, but I might be a little bit more worried about him. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.